Hello, folks. Phil Gallagher of ThrabenU here for another direct to YouTube special. This one today is brought to you by Michael B., who donated to try to get me to port his modern rock deck to Legacy, and he kicked in a little bit of extra cash to make that happen. So I want to start by talking about the deck list that he submitted and what it was trying to do, and then I'm going to talk about what I think this deck will be better as. Okay, so the idea of a rock deck is that you are playing a solid mana base, usually either like a green black deck, or sometimes it's like a junk deck as well. And the idea is you're playing a lot of just like solid, good cards backed by discard, and you just kind of play a mid-range game that is slightly bigger than a lot of what your opponents are doing. And cards like Bob and Tarmogoyf end up being very central to that plan. So taking a quick look at the original deck list. The original deck list had Chrome Mox for mana acceleration, a handful of 3-drops, notably Opposition Agent, which has seen a lot of love on the stream recently, and then a lot of the traditional green-black staples of Modern. Notably here, this deck is playing a whopping 4 Hexdrinkers, which honestly I think I really like. I've never seen a deck try that before in Legacy, so I'm pretty excited to try that out. And as far as the sideboard goes, it's very dedicated, right? It's a very clean sideboard. I want to hate on islands, I want to hate on small creatures, I want to hate on graveyards, and then I want a little more stuff for decks with counterspells or artifacts. And when I look at this deck list, here's what I saw. This is what my mental process went through. I thought, this deck probably doesn't have enough card advantage for Chrome Mox. Like, it has a couple of Sylvan Libraries and it has Bobs, and that's some card advantage, right? But, you know, Chrome Mox is the sort of card where when you cast that, you're willing to go down a card because you're pretty sure that the card you play just wins you the game. You know, you're Chrome Moxing so that you can Trinisphere or Chalice of the Void or something of that nature. And I didn't feel like the cards here just hit hard enough in order to do that. I also see Wasteland as a colorless land in a deck with green-black cards and black-black cards and more black-black cards. And I thought that the Wastelands, while having their use, probably are a little bit greedy here. Like, if you want to keep activating Scavenging Ooze, if you want to have mana around to be activating a Hexdrinker and leveling up that to 8, if you want to have mana around to keep casting things that you're getting off of Dark Confidants, I don't know that Wasteland is really the right plan. And so I sat down and I spent about a half an hour tuning the deck list, and this is what I ended up with. All right, so number 1. The original deck had 23 mana sources, 3 of which were the Chrome Moxen. If I get rid of the Chrome Moxen, I probably need to add at least 1 land. And I did so. I adjusted the mana base in a couple of different ways. First, I thought that Nurturing Peatland, being a land that cycles, is a bit of a concession in that you want some utility out of your mana base, but you still really need your mana colors early and often. And so I decided to try out a couple of these. As a 2-color deck, I think we can get away with this. Number 2, I added a 1 of Volrath's Stronghold. This is a card that is just so powerful versus a control deck that isn't exiling your creatures. You know, if you get Bob every turn, if you get Tireless Tracker or Tarmogoyf every turn, you can just do so much work versus your opponents. The other thing I thought is, what if we do a little bit of graveyard-based synergy? And these Urza Baubles can be cantrips that kind of count towards getting lands. They should probably be the other bauble, but, you know, the loan account only goes so far, and Hexdrinkers are $32 each online. Oof. Okay. Most of the core I kept around here, but I decided that I wanted a couple more threats in the deck, rather than some of the utility like Miri's Guile. And so I opted for a couple of Grim Flayers, which also work pretty well with Urza's Bauble. If there's 4 types of things in the graveyard because you have Delirium, then all of a sudden this is a 4/4 Trampler for 2 that can also give you some card selection. So while this is no Bob in terms of like, you answer this or it's big trouble, this card's pretty solid. The other thing I really wanted was the Plague Engineer effect in Game 1. That's just so strong in the format right now that I promoted those to the main deck, and I added Tireless Trackers as another mana sink and source of card advantage to make up for the fact that we did bump up to 21 lands. As far as the sideboard, I decided I wanted to diversify a little bit. Generally speaking, for these discard-based decks, I really like pairing them with Surgical Extraction. Reason being, you cast a Thoughtseize against a Sneak and Show player or an Omniscience player of some kind, and then you surgically extract that combo piece, and all of a sudden their deck is a whole lot less threatening. And so your graveyard hate becomes not only something you board in versus the graveyard-based decks, but also just more generically versus combo decks. And I added a couple more discard spells in the sideboard to supplement that plan. Now, the other thing I did here was kind of diversify the sideboard a little bit more. This one's going to be a hot take, and I'm going to get some comments for this one, but I think Veil of Summer is overrated right now. I've found in playing games with a whole bunch of various decks that there's a lot of times where, like, you have a Veil of Summer, but you still really need to play a card on curve, and so the Veil of Summer doesn't really do you all that much good. And the Veil of Summer is not particularly good when you're behind either, right? Like your opponent goes Delver Go and you're facing down a Lightning Bolt worth of damage each turn. That Veil of Summer is maybe not doing what you need it to do. Especially in a deck that has some uncounterable cards like Abrupt Decay. I don't know that how necessary those Veil of Summers are. Like, obviously they'll be good sometimes, but I haven't been particularly impressed with Veil of Summer in the post-ban world. And so I decided to diversify a little bit, and instead of just Veil of Summer for the blue decks, now we have Carpet of Flower, Choke, more Tireless Trackers, Sylvan Library, and this is a more varied suite. Otherwise, I ended up cutting one Liliana of the Veil from the main deck. Again, just trimming one black card is probably something that is totally reasonable to do. And so when I did that, I was down one Edict for something problematic like a True Name Nemesis or a Merit Lodge or something. So I added two Liliana's Triumphs to the sideboard in order to round things out. All right, that was kind of a longish deck tech, but I really had a lot to say about this one because this was one of those times where, I got paid to do a little extra and like really dive into the deck, try to adjust it before I played it, rather than get into the rounds and go like, yeah, this is what I think about it. So we'll see how this edited version of this works. If you are interested in doing this sort of thing for your own deck list, where I do more than just play it, but I try to like workshop it a little bit as well, that donation information is always available in the video description, as is the deck list. I'm really looking forward to trying this one out. And if you're excited about this, please take a second and throw me a like. It helps out a lot with the whole YouTube algorithm thing and my monetization. All right, let's battle. Okay, I have kept a very solid opening hand with like Thoughtseize and Hexdrinker as early plays. The issue here, though, is that my opponent has opened up on a Chancellor of the Annex. That means that my first play is going to be countered, and so how do I want to do this? If I don't get discarded, I can just play Thoughtseize for 2 mana next turn. If I do get discarded, I lose the Thoughtseize and can play Hexdrinker for 2 mana next turn. So that's also fine. I think I'm just gonna not crack it here. Lead on a fetch. That could represent some sort of Bant deck. Ooh. We're getting oopsed. What if they just like play this the 3 mana one and pass the turn? Oh no, they're not gonna pass the turn. Alright. Unfortunate. Alright, not much that can be done here. See if there's anything spicy in the deck list. Chancellors count as spicy. Alright, so opponent has Pact of Negation as well. And a 2 of Chancellor. Okay. So there's the Thassa's Oracle, there's the Dread Return. I'm dead. I'm not going to let them Cabal Therapy me. Now this is a deck that Leyline is better against than Surgical. That's okay. We have a good number of tools here. So I have Surgical Extractions and a little bit more discard. I have Collector Oof for the artifact mana. I guess that's a Nombo with my baubles. Didn't think about that prior to the league. Plague Engineer on whatever Narcomoeba is also, I guess, technically wins the game. So, what don't I need? The Abrupt Decay and Assassin's Trophy things are pretty medium. It's going to be really rare that my opponent just, like, passes the turn with a key thing in play. Although I guess I can, like, Assassin's Trophy the land and Abrupt Decay the artifact mana, so I guess those technically do things. Liliana Last Hope doesn't seem to do anything. The game doesn't need to go long enough for Tireless Tracker. Honestly, most of what I'm doing is going to be based on the opening hand, so I don't need these. And then Grimflayer is kind of a generic threat. Those can also go. Library or Bitter Blossom better than that? Probably. Like, I can take the Sylvan Library to just find more discard and surgicals and such. I guess. I'm not excited about Library, but I'm not particularly excited about any of this other stuff. Maybe that means I'm supposed to just, like, keep a bauble in. IOK plus 1 redraw. How is this? The big-ish Tarmogoyf. Very fast. Hand's not insane. I think I can get a hand of the same quality very easily. I'm gonna try to do better. This hand is much better. My opponent is thinking about a mulligan. My opponent is thinking about a mulligan. Alright, my opponent ended up keeping their 6. I will go ahead and lead on Thoughtseize, since it is important to take a 4-drop sometimes. I can take their land. That's kind of a cheeky move, just take them off of black mana. But I think I'll just take the win condition. Like, that deck is just full of mana. What's my life total? Doesn't matter too much. I think I'm just going to be on the line of, like, fetch for that marginal thinning. My opponent has no artifact mana currently. So I think I'm just going to Inquisition them. Spirit Guide over a Cabal Ritual. Pact doesn't really matter. I'm not going to be doing anything on their turn, and they can't really pay for the Pact anyway. I'll take a Spirit Guide. Begin growing the snake. I don't really have the, like, highest quality of hate here. I guess for my surgical extraction specifically, I could have thought about taking the Pact of Negation over a Spirit Guide. Because my opponent's very likely to draw more mana. Hello? Alright. Go 4 of a kind. So at this level, it turns into a 4/4. I'm not getting to 8 this turn. I can just crash in with this much. That way, if for some reason something were to get, like, bounced in the middle of combat, I could still deal with it. My opponent's drawn enough cards that I'm starting to get nervous that, like, they're just gonna find what they need to go off. I have a 2-turn clock. But I really just need another piece of interaction next turn. Like, this is okay interaction. All right. We'll go big. Big snake. This is the turn where my opponent can potentially go off and beat me. I am a little lucky to win after drawing that many lands. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lands after pulling 4 out of my deck from fetching. I don't think anything really changes on the draw here. I think I will just submit as is again. So it's a surgical hand. Not a good surgical hand. I think since I have no way of actually casting this Hymn to Turok, I probably throw this one back. Notably in this matchup specifically. Like, a leyline here would be so good, whereas the surgical is just fine. I think I ship it. Well, this hand isn't playable for a different reason. This is worse than my first hand. But I think this is probably about the point where I just have to keep a hand. I keep 5 of these. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in all likelihood, or maybe keep the Abrupt Decay. This is a risky one. Guess I keep it and hope they can't turn 1. Resolves. Hoo hoo hoo. The Thoughtseize misses. I think that's a good name on their end. If I hit a land between my next 2 draw steps, I might still have a chance here. Okay. I mean, there's the Undercity Informer. Cross off that. I do so much damage if I get to cast as Hymn to Turok. Taking out that Cabal Ritual means that my opponent can't cast a 4-drop. Okay. Alright. How it is sometimes. If I draw a land, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do anymore. Like, if the turn comes back to me, it means that my opponent doesn't have something that kills me. And with the 4 mana in play, maybe I should be doing something like playing Scavenging Ooze, because using that to take out the Thassa's Oracle when it gets put into the graveyard is better than anything else. Alright, opponent, like, why do we keep pausing in my upkeep here? Like, let me play my turn. This is a disappointing way to lose a game of Magic. Alright. I found a land. So again, like, my opponent can't kill me yet. I draw another land, I Plague Engineer, and I shut off the Narcomoebas from mattering, and then my opponent can't win from there unless I have something that answers my stuff. So the question is, like, what is the best bridge for if I don't draw that? And now that my opponent has restocked their hand, the best thing might just be Scavenging Ooze. My opponent very likely has mana. If I make it around the table again, Scavenging Ooze is probably the best thing to have. Like, I could Abrupt Decay a Lotus Petal, but, like, since my opponent hasn't been killing me, I think the thing that they most likely have is just mana. I can have Draw Step. No? No can has Draw Step? Alright, I'm just gonna hold up Scavenging Ooze. On my opponent's turn, if they don't do anything, I will just eat an Undercity Informer. I don't need anything more in this than this in play to win, at least theoretically. Okay. That's fine. That doesn't really do anything. Okay. Now I'm in really good shape. I can play a Plague Engineer, put it on Illusion, and then my opponent would need like triple Spirit Guides in play in order to get through what I have going on. I guess my opponent theoretically could Pact it. And pay for the Pact, but that's very costly. Checking myself, Illusion, Illusion. This is not a very traditional game versus Oops. All right. I think I'm officially like good to go from here. I guess like the question is like how do I best wiggle the game from here? Him to Turok can start to look good again. I can also just play another threat. Instant creature, land, sorcery, Tarmogoyf of 4/5. Plague Engineer can't really attack. If I play a 4/5 and put my opponent on a 2-turn clock, that's fine. I could also just put a second Plague Engineer on Illusion. Just really, really make sure that my opponent can't just, like, get rid of Plague Engineer with some, like, Abrupt Decay or equivalent and then get in there. That's probably just better. And if my opponent starts playing other creatures to board, then I just Abrupt Decay those. This doesn't win the game as quickly as possible, but this might be safer. I don't really expect my opponent to have very many things in that can deal with this. I like Thoughtseize a lot to start things off. Now I get to actually sculpt a plan knowing what my opponent can do. Not much. Not much at all. Like, I don't even really want to mess with the things that are in their hand. Like, I'm good with these things more or less existing where they are. Summoner's Pact is just a spirit guide. I guess that's their best card here, though. I'll grab that. All right. I'll just Abrupt Decay one of those out of the way. And then I'll crash in for 5. Assuming my opponent trades, which I think they do. Nope. Okay, that was a slow one for an Oops All Spells match, but somehow miraculously things worked out for me. I don't really believe it myself. Okay, my opening hand is kind of a fair one here. Let's keep this and see how it fares. Like, there's more utility than this looks, because there's a redraw associated with this hand, a second redraw associated with this hand, and then we pretty quickly get, at least 2, probably 3 card types into the graveyard for Grimflayer. So, the Liliana's triumphs that I put into the sideboard are probably going to be really relevant here, because we're probably looking at a depths matchup, which probably means that I want to Thoughtseize. Oh, good God, that is a lot of redundancy. I guess a Sylvan Scrying is better. This is not a matchup I'm expecting to win in game 1. My opponent has to tutor 2 times first before they can get me. They're pretty likely to be able to Sylvan Scrying for Dark Depths this turn. Oh, did they just draw another piece? Oh, that's fucking savage. That was the nuts as far as the draw goes. My Liliana's not an out here. Yep. Okay. Not having access to the wastelands that were in the original deck is sort of problematic here. Alright, so I probably go for the surgicals. I'm gonna have to think about it a little bit. But I imagine that I need that, and I definitely need the Bitter Blossoms and Liliana's Triumph. So, for sure, I need to bring in 5 cards. The Surgicals are okay. They keep me from having to worry about certain problems for too long. Lily Last Hope can be good against Vampire Hex Mages. I guess the same is true of Plague Engineer, technically. The Assassin's Trophy, very good. The Abrupt Decay is okay. If I could also, like, realistically get the lands, well, I guess I can get them with him. Alright, so what's not great? Ooze is probably not where I need to be. I think I can start off by cutting that. I think I can probably trim Tireless Tracker. That's just not the best place to be in terms of, like, I don't want to tap out for that and then spend mana repeatedly on that, I don't think. Maybe the Liliana Last Hope isn't actually good. Maybe, like, that's not a realistic win condition, so I should just, like, play another Plague Engineer in its spot. And maybe this is just a little slow to set up. I don't know about the Surgicals. Like, if I thought seize them and then surgical something, that's pretty cool. If I him and get a land piece, that's a real way to steal a game. Maybe on the play, I keep my Abrupt Decays, and on the draws, I bring in the Surgical to help me, like, Mize a win. Not 100% sure on that one. Yep. There's a lot of interaction. We'll see if it's enough. Okay, the lands are just naturally there. That fucking sucks. And alright. The way this is gonna go, if I take Elvish Spirit, guys, they thought sees me, take the Tarmogoyf, then my thought sees effectively does nothing because the Knot of the World isn't that big of a deal. And if I don't take the Elvish Spirit Guide, then they just, like, make a Merit Lodge on turn 3. That's some shit. Alright. Well, hopefully we draw another threat. Yikes. That Urborg is also a very good draw. It turns Dark Depths into a mana-producing land. Now I need, like, an Assassin's Trophy. Alright, Bob. You got work to do. I revealed Swamp. I did not reveal Liliana's Triumph, which is very good. Alright. Mana Confluence times 2 plus Dark Depths. So you're telling me there's a chance. is also an each opponent thing, which is real strong here. Hello. That seems like an early concession, but, like, I'll obviously take it. This game was not over. It was good for me, but it was not over. Alright, on the draw, do I want to mess around with Surgical? It's harder to, like, hymn something into the graveyard and then have it be super relevant on the draw. Decay and Plague Engineer are both significantly worse on the draw. Alright. I'm not happy about doing this, and maybe I don't do all three. I think I can probably, like, trim a Plague Engineer and maybe 2 Abrupt Decays. Keeps a few answers to a Vampire Hexmage that is still just played out. I think I'm good with that. Still leaves me with at least 3 answers to Sylvan Library as well. Eh, 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 eh. Yeah. Yeah, this is fine. we can work with this. We keep double surgical. Just thought sees you rip a tutor out of the deck. Thought sees you rip a tutor out of the deck. All right. They have the turn 2 off Vampire Hexmage, or the turn 3 naturally off the lands. That is a very good hand. I'll need to hit a land for Liliana's Triumph. Alright, so they drew a Spirit Guide. I'm just going to take a quick glance at this. There's a 1 of Stifle, there's a 1 of Assassin's Trophy, there's a Bojuka Bog. Actually, there's enough weird stuff here that I do want to screenshot this. Do this while I'm thinking about it as well. Okay, there's the land. My opponent played Outstage. They have 1 unknown card, they have 1 Spirit Guide. I play a Thoughtseize, I die to a 2nd Spirit Guide. But I think I need to play the Thoughtseize. I think I need to keep advancing my game. I think I'd take the Spirit Guide here so that can't be played out to protect from Merit Lodge. A little weird, because I really, like, theoretically want to take the crop rotation, but I think I have to take the Spirit Guide in case my opponent, like, plays around it. I'm not going to put a level into Hexdrinker here. Just going to pass the turn. Surgical Dark Depths. Opponent. Yep. That was a little close for comfort. It was Liliana Triumphs doing some serious work. Alright, I'm on the play and I don't have any lands. Hand's beautiful. Snap keep. We'll toss back one of the redundant Tarmogoyfs, I think. Possible I should just toss back the Lily, since, like, there's going to be a lot of matchups where that card just isn't good, and on 3 mana I'll probably want to play Tireless Tracker instead of it. Talk myself into it. Oh no. Oh no. So we're now on 2 rounds where I wish I had the ley lines instead of surgical. JK, surgical's great. That's so much less scary than I thought it was going to be. Bob? Bob or Goyf? Goyf is just a 3/4 already. It's a big butt. In game 1, Scavenging Ooze is something that I would really like to see. Hexdrinker is also something I'd really like to see. Decays are fine. Assassin's Trophy is probably good. But I think I'm just going to play, like, Big Booty Tarmogoyf here. My turn 2 is better doing this. My turn 3 would be better if I played Bob, because I'd have a better chance of finding a 1-drop so that I could double spell next turn. That is a play that makes the Tarmogoyf worse. Oh, now they have a Hogak. Two Plague Engineer, 1 Lily of the Veil, 1 Assassin's Trophy. Technically, also a large pile of bodies could do it. The fact that that shrinks the Tarmogoyf is pretty rough. This gets a land back into the graveyard. Tarmogoyfs are 2/3s. I think I need to play the Bob to try and very specifically look for, I guess, a Plague Engineer. The 8 that I'm taking here is pretty rough, though. It more or less means that I just need to find an answer or effective answer to Hogak in this turn cycle. Otherwise, taking another 8 probably means I die to my own Bob. Really? I don't know about that. I guess it's fine if they have the land, because then they get to, like, fetch that, like, sacrifice the grave crawler so they can put it back into the graveyard. Or, like, sacrifice the bloodghast first, I suppose. Yeah, okay, it's fine if they have the land. I thought they were fishing. So now they sack bloodghast before doing that for value. Armor's big. I guess I can also just play second Armagoyf, and that trades with a Hogak. Armagoyf got smaller. Can turn it back into a 3/4. My opponent is just going to cast another Hogak in order to shrink my Tarmogoyf. Nope, they're going deeper. Now they have the bridge from below. Now they have 2 bridge from belows. That's not good. They cast the Hogak. They hold priority. They sack the Hogak. I think at this point I'm just out of outs. My opponent is just going to end up with enough zombies to just go wide of me. I'm going to go ahead and just throw in the towel here. Alright, let's get that Plague Engineer in there. I need that. Get the Surgicals in there. I need that. Liliana's Triumphs are simultaneously good and bad. In that, like, it's an answer to a Hogak if I can clear the rest of the board. That is kind of a big ask. I think these are coming in, but it's a little bad versus the recursive stuff. Him is awkward. Hexdrinker fully leveled can soak up most of the damage from a Hogak attack. That's relevant. I think all of my cards are, like, kind of fine, but not overly impressive in any one category. I think I'm going to go down 2 Grim Flares. I think I'm going to go down 1 Abrupt Decay, despite the fact that it hits the altar. Then I think I'm going to go down 3 of these 4 baubles. Just keep one as something that can randomly grow the Tarmogoyf, or just like be a cheap card to get off a Bob or a redraw. I'm fine with that. I could also play Sylvan Library, but my life total is going to be under a decent amount of pressure. This hand is just fine. Is just fine good enough? I think just fine is good enough here. Like, you don't necessarily want to be mulling to Oblivion against a discard-based deck. And this time around, I'm probably playing out the Bob first. I really want to hit the land drop to just, like, turn this into an Abyss versus my opponent's creatures. My opponent has led on Black Lotus. Yeah. Lily Last Hope not necessarily the best versus Stitcher Supplier in particular. Oh, the Bridge from Below is rough there. I was wondering like how my opponent was going to get enough cards into the graveyard to produce Hogak, and that was the answer. God, Plague Engineer is even kind of awkward currently. Not great. Not great at all. I'm going to see if Liliana can gain me 8 life. Oh, fuck, Bridge. Alright, I just messed that up. I was worrying about other things. Oh, I'm just going to be dead again. Yeah, so even if I would have made the better play of just like playing out a Tarmogoyf that turn, my opponent still would have just decimated me. This build with Satyr Wayfinder seems really good. Yeah, like my opponent is going to produce a Hogak and a whole bunch of zombies and also trigger Vengevine. Like, I'm getting decimated here. I guess my fair hand is just not good enough here, and I should have mulled to a surgical. All right, that's enough. We've seen enough here. That's brutal. All right, I have a solid opening hand here that will unfortunately not have a 1-drop, but turn to him into a lot of this other stuff is pretty strong. We're playing against elves, and my opponent has an explosive turn 1. It's not... Oh, interesting. Resolves. Don't know exactly what our opponent is doing over there. Alright, looks like some sort of bug control deck, and they've just opened up on a very strange opener. So I expect Green Sun to be a portion of my opponent's deck now. Alright, very happy to just hit another land drop here. How do I want to play this? I think I just like Ooze to stabilize the board and then start thinking about a Planeswalker. I want to eat this Leovold in response, specifically because of Murderous Cut, which is crazy to play around, but I'm going to play around it. Like, something like Fatal Push is so much more likely, but be a little frustrating if we just get Days Undoing comboed here. Alright, that tells me they don't have it. They would have just fired it off and taken that value. Do I want to trade here? Not really. I'm gonna take that damage. Oh, that's not bad. Oh. Okay. I'll take it. Alright, with dueling Scavenging Oozes, my Armagoyfs are gonna look a little embarrassing later. Alright. What is the plan? Hull Breacher is scary, specifically because of Days Undoing, but my opponent might not even be playing it. They could just be playing Hull Breacher as like a value creature in this shell. I think my opponent's Scavenging Ooze is actually the scariest thing here. I think I'm going to go ahead and take that out. My opponent should have eaten some things out of graveyards in response to that. That was lazy. I'm not willing to attack. I take too much on the backswing. This Ooze is just holding down the fort. This Thoughtseize is real bad if my opponent's last card is either a land or a collected company. Eh. Or a removal spell. I don't think I cast this Thoughtseize. I don't think that's worth a lightning bolt to myself. I don't want to kill their Death Toucher and maybe turn the corner here. I don't know that I need to do that yet, though. Let's start with this. Oh, they're just done with me. Okay. So the Collector Oof does things versus Tireless Tracker and also against Bobble. But I don't know that that's still going to be in for the post-sideboard games. What's my opponent's mana base like? They had Dryad Arbor, they had Island, they had Trop. Maybe Carpet is actually good. In a mid-range fight, having more mana is very nice. My opponent does have Leovold, though, which Carpet Flowers is not so much. I think I'm gonna do it. I think I'm gonna go Carpet Choke, Plague Engineers, Bitter Blossom, think about Liliana's Triumph and Library. I think I'm gonna go down on the baubles because like my opponent has Collector Oof and they have Hull Breacher. I don't think I want to mess around with that sort of stuff. And if I do that, that gets me pretty close already. Maybe I junk one of these to round things out. I think I can be happy with that. So like, do I Triumph in addition? Playing Triumph is awkward if your opponent is on Coco because like they play a 2-for-1, you play a 1-for-1, you end up behind. My opponent has all sorts of things that I want to get rid of. The other thing I need to be thinking about is Uro. And I might actually need Surgical for Uro. Maybe with like Decay and Ooze, it's fine. Maybe the Uro is just a one of. If the Uro is just a one of, I can like maybe beat it. If it's a core part of the game plan, I don't know that I can. I don't really want Surgical though, if I can avoid playing it. Let's get more information this game. I'm gonna keep this. Hexdrinker is pretty legit. And I have two different early interaction spells for my opponent's creatures if I care about them. If I don't care about them, it's snake time. Maybe I shouldn't have played Forest. Maybe I should have fetched, so if I drew exactly him to Turok, I could use that next turn. Alright, so my opponent has a Hull Breacher. Almost certainly. We gonna play the game where we stare at each other? Pretty good at that game. If my opponent is playing a bunch of Veil of Summers, the Thoughtseize this turn is awkward. God, that's really awkward. I don't think I get to play around that. Make them have it. Ah. Well, we're going to fetch in response to that. Of these, I don't want my opponent to have Scavenging Ooze. We'll leave them with Icefang, Coatl, and Assassin's Trophy. That's fine. I'll trade for Dryad Arbor. This lets me, like, Icefang on Snake, keep a Bob around. Oh, that's quite good. Does give my opponent access to black, but, like, whatever. I love casting him to Turok off Forest. We're just hoping to hit the Assassin's Trophy here so that my opponent doesn't have an answer to Bob. Nice. Now I play Bob. I have Plague Engineer for Snake for next turn, and hopefully an unchecked Bob. Rough. Well. This is why we play 4 of these, right? So now we have protection from instants. Next turn, if we draw a land, it can have protection from everything. Oh, that's fine. I'll do this pre-combat and put this on Snake. That means another Icefang Coatl can't, like, jump in and ambush us. And next turn, I'm representing 6 damage. I think I'm just supposed to trade the Death Toucher for the Death Toucher here. Five, 6, 7, 8. All right, we have Baby Progenitus. Not actually super worried about that. Oh, wow, that was a bad collected company. My opponent only got one creature there. Nice. Hexdrinker doing some serious work. Alright, final round here. I am keeping a solid opening hand. I don't really want to see double Scavenging Ooze in an opening hand, but most of the rest of what's going on here is fine. Okay. Block this turn is hard. What do you do against Mountain? So Mountain can be Painter, Mountain can be Burn, Mountain can be a Red Prison deck. And if I'm playing against Price of Progress, I really don't want non-basics. If I'm playing against a Blood Moon, most of my win conditions are actually green, though, not black. So I think I use Polluted Delta to get basic Swamp. If my opponent is sitting on, like, multiple Blood Moon effects, this is awkward for me. Because I'll be taken off of the Scavenging Ooze. And at the same time, if I am just playing against Burn, and I get a land that's not green, it might be a little harder for me to eat with Scavenging Ooze later. I think I just accept that and do this. Okay. My opponent has 3 mana next turn. What am I more afraid of? The 3 ball's pretty bad for me. If I take Trinisphere, my opponent plays Rabble Master. I get attacked for 1. I Hymn to Turok them and try to take them off of the Chandra. I get attacked for a decent number. And then I trade a Scavenging Ooze for a Rabble Master. Then I play a new Scavenging Ooze. That should be fine. Yeah, the line where I don't take Trinisphere involves my opponent getting a Chandra into play, which I think is just too scary. 3 ball it is. The next question is, like, am I fetching the basic swamp on the next turn, giving my opponent a huge opportunity to Blood Moon me? Tricky. Oh, shit. My opponent drew a Spirit Guide. That's very bad for me. Like, my line was set up so that I could get that out of hand, so that didn't hit play. Alright. Things have changed, unfortunately. So now I need to make sure that this down ticks at some point. Probably means playing an Ooze this turn, followed by an Ooze and a Hexdrinker the following turn. I'm at 14 already, which is really not good. Oh, wow. That's interesting. So they draw then. Like, kill the Ooze, play Rabble Master, get in for 1, have a whole bunch of damage represented next turn, plus a clear board, seems really good to me. I do not like their line here. I can't punish super hard, unfortunately. I didn't, like, draw a removal spell. Like, if I drew an Abrupt Decay, I got to Abrupt Decay this, eat this, attack Chandra down to 3, and then if Chandra minuses to kill the ooze, like, we're done from there. For anyone who says, like, there's no thinking involved in Red Prison, wrong. This carves me a basic forest. The difference between 12 and 11 is an odd number, so that doesn't really make any difference in terms of life total. Now I put 2 different creatures on the board, both of which can represent the Planeswalker dying next turn. Now, there is this thing to worry about, but it requires red. And so my opponent... Well, I guess my opponent could plus the Chandra. Oh, that's actually pretty good. I didn't play around that. Okay, they just drew the red land anyway. This is one of the first times I've actually seen this card be good. Generally speaking, I found this card to be just worse than Mountain by a very considerable amount. Alright, so I probably just lose to this emblem. The only way I don't lose to that emblem is if my opponent just floods out. And I believe that I do Thoughtseize my opponent here, as awkward as that is. Because any card that's in my opponent's hand is a Lava Axe. And so I just need to take it. If it's a land, it's a land. Yeah, that Chrome Mox was a Lava Axe, so we saved 3 points of life there. Okay. How bad is it? Exactsies. Alright. Plague Engineer on Goblin is great. Edicts aren't really good. Tireless Tracker is fine. It's a little awkward versus Karn sometimes. Um, I don't hate Inquisitions, I also don't love them, but it's something that allows me to pick apart my opponent's opening hand, even though it's kind of bad against Chalice. Inquisition notably does miss um, the Chandras and the Karns. So it's not flawless by any means. My opponent is playing Karn. I'm going to go ahead and sideboard these out. How do I feel about Library? Library's nice if I get Blood Mooned and I only have, like, say, Forest. But most of the other cards that I have here have utility. I don't think I'm going to board anything else out. That has no land. Uh, this is a very good 5-card hand. Like, I would consider 2 basic lands plus Abrupt Decay a very good 5-card hand. 17 black sources I can hit to make this hand great. Yeah, alright. Let's get rid of the double colored card. Not stoked about this. Arbal Master is fine. I can trade Ooze for that. Trading Ooze for that and then having a Tarmogoyf for a little bit later is great. Red Prison historically is not good against Tarmogoyf. Our opponent, this is your big moment. What do you have? A little bit of a nuisance, but I assume that my opponent slows down considerably from here. I would love to draw black mana. Sure, that's obvious, though. That's not black mana. Whatever, the Tarmogoyf is big enough to kill Goblin Rabblemaster. That's what matters here. And any land means that Tireless Tracker can block the remaining goblins. Alright, so opponent opting not to trade and instead just going for a decent amount of damage in. That's totally fine. I think this is a fine Abrupt Decay, but I don't need to do it now. I can just wait. Why do I not have a stop on my opponent's main phase? I must have accidentally set stop. Ugh, that's annoying. I must have shut that off earlier when I meant to shut off a draw step stop. That's a nuisance. It's a very noticeable life difference, too. This puts a sorcery in graveyard. Already a creature in graveyard. I can put an artifact into graveyard, and then that grows my stuff. The Bone Crusher Giant is the best card here in a vacuum because it kills Tireless Tracker. Maybe I just need to take that over taking the Chalice. Let's do that. Like, turning Tarmogoyf into the 4/5 is sick. But I don't think that's worth the cost currently. Now I believe I am very solidly the beatdown. Oh, that's insane. I replayed my land. That should mean that I have lethal next turn. Because the goblins are no longer blockers. I can't take 9 this turn. My opponent can't draw like both Fiery Confluence and a Soul Land to kill me. Alright. On the draw, my Hymn to Turoks get a little bit worse because there's a better chance that I have to deal with the board. And there's also a higher chance that I get Blood Mooned. So that probably means I want Liliana's Triumph on the draw, even though it's kind of anemic versus Goblin tokens. The other thing I can do is just board in Collector Oof as a 2/2. That also shuts off some fast mana. Don't think that's great when I'm on the play, but I think on the draw that's reasonable. Okay, my hand has a basic land to cast Scavenging Ooze and Tarmogoyf. It has a removal spell, and it has 2 pieces of hand disruption. This one's a pretty easy keep from me. Like, it's obviously better if this is a basic swamp to better play around a turn 1 Blood Moon. But if I do just get Blood Moon on turn 1, like, I still have things to do here. Oh, excellent. I actually get to use a discard spell. It becomes very good once your opponent has mulliganed. Very specifically against Red Prison. I have Ensnaring Bridge beat. Alright, do I want to take the Rabble Master, or do I want to take the Trinisphere? The Trinisphere is kind of annoying, because I don't have a 3rd land drop currently. If I take Trinisphere, I use the first Abrupt Decay on Goblin Rabble Master. Then I will have a very large Tarmogoyf to play as a follow-up. They'll play Bridge, I'll Abrupt Decay Bridge. I think I can accidentally lose the game to Trinisphere, but I don't think I accidentally lose the game to any of those other cards. That's very good for cleanup later. We'll just grab that now, since I accidentally had my stop set wrong before and took 1 more point of damage than I should have. That's fine. Now, notably, I do need to keep this second Abrupt Decay for the bridge. Can't forget about that. Or not. Alright, my opponent doesn't have red currently. That's the good news. The other good news is that Tarmogoyf is a 4/5. Do I just want to decay the Legion War Boss now? No, I want Tarmogoyf in play so that it can pressure a Planeswalker if my opponent does play it. Don't hate that. It begins. This means it's easier for me to get through to a Chandra if something happens and my opponent is actually able to put it into play. The fact that this does 4 is very awkward right now. Because I can, like, block one of these creatures. Alright. And I'll block. Your opponent might have something like a Stomp to just go and finish off the Liliana. Called it exactly. Alright. I'm gonna fetch the basic here. I know I want it at some point this game. I have a 3/3 in the hole, which I think means it's fine to just go ahead and attack with Tarmogoyf. Tarmogoyf is a theoretical 2-turn clock. Maybe I just should have eaten with Ooze as well to play around Stomp better. Ooh, I don't know about that line. I don't think that line's good. Like, I think you just plus for mana and put Bone Crusher Giant into play there. Alright, what do I do this turn? There's this Bone Crusher Giant that's hanging out in exile. I can just Abrupt Decay the bigger of the 2 Goblin tokens. And crash in. Guaranteed take the Planeswalker out of the range where it can't minus, which is pretty important right now. It's a bit of a waste of an Abrupt Decay. But I hit that thing once so that it ultimating isn't realistic if my opponent just grabs Snaring Bridge, or at least like it ultimating quickly. That's pretty good. Alternatively, I can just attack in if my opponent goes for the... No, they wouldn't go for the double block with the Rabble Master still in graveyard. Yeah, alright. I think I'm going to go ahead and just do this. Also possible that I should just go for my opponent's face. Just make them chump block with Bone Crusher next turn, taking 2 damage. That might just be better. But I can lose the Ooze to the Chandra Minus, which I don't really like. Alright. Attack the Planeswalker. Eat the Rabble Master? I think I will. Makes the Tarmogoyf smaller, but the Ooze bigger. Then I think I do play my land. The reason not to is a Tireless Tracker. A reason to is, like, if my Scavenging Ooze somehow dies, I can Volrath Stronghold it back in my upkeep, then play it for my turn. Alright, Abrade, Scavenging Ooze is out of range for that. Sorry, that was a new Bone Crusher Giant. Oh, new Tarmogoyf is insane. That means I can just go for my opponent's face here pretty easily. I can just kill the Planeswalker, though. Like, I can trade Scavenging Ooze for Bone Crusher Giant, and then have 10 power in play. Is that better than just getting my opponent dead? Ensnaring Bridge, specifically, is a reason to just kill the Planeswalker. Alright. Now I can also Volrath Stronghold the Scavenging Ooze on top of my library to just make sure I have another live draw next turn. Basically, Ensnaring Bridge is the one card that I currently care about. Yeah, that should mean my opponent is deterministically dead. Because their own Trinisphere means that they can't make enough mana to actually do anything. Alright. We end up with a 4-1 in this league. Alright, overall thoughts with the deck list. So one thing I missed during deck construction was I missed Urza's Bauble plus the Collector Oof out of the sideboard. The Collector Oof was just in the original sideboard, and I didn't really think about changing it because Collector Oof is a good card. Um, if you wanted to continue to play the Urza's Bauble, that should probably be Force of Vigor. That said, I kept boarding out Urza's Bauble, and it did feel like I had enough mana. So, like, the partial lands that these were adding and the ability to fuel the Tarmogoyf is maybe not necessary. So, like, these were the weakest cards in the deck this league. So maybe this package that I added wasn't actually the real deal. I really liked 4 main deck Hexdrinkers. Like, we were able to just trade it away. Like, we traded one for a Dryad Arbor because we knew, like, we could reliably find one if the game went on later. I liked that. I liked the Plague Engineers in the main deck. I liked the Tracker in the main deck. Generally speaking, I liked how the sideboard felt. Surgical versus Leyline is kind of weird because, like, we definitely had a round where, like, we really wished it was a Leyline, but then again, when we surgically extracted Dark Depth, that won us a game, right? Or a match, really. I really liked adding the Liliana's Triumphs. I felt like that was a very good choice, and I feel like the anti-blue suite that I had was pretty good. Feeling how mana hungry this deck is, though, with the Hexdrinkers and the Tireless Trackers, I think there should be a second Carpet of Flowers in the sideboard over the Choke. I think Carpet of Flowers is just a better anti-blue card, generally speaking. And if I'm being totally honest, the only reason why I didn't play 2 in the first place was because they're very expensive on Magic Online. Looking back to the original for a second, I don't think I want Miri's Guile or Chrome Mox, and I don't think Opposition Agent is fast enough or, like, is going to be the highest thing that I want to prioritize with my mana. So if I were going to play this again, I would be thinking about what I want to do with these 6 slots, because I feel pretty darn good about everything else that's in the main deck. The Urborg did work a couple of times with allowing us to cast the Hymn on turn 2 off of the forest. I think its inclusion is okay. The Nurturing Peatland didn't cost us too much life, although I also don't think we cycled it ever. But we played against a lot of combo this league, so maybe that's not unexpected. Yeah, but generally speaking, feel good about the rock, and I also made it throughout the entire video, I think, without making a Dwayne The Rock Johnson reference, so that's pretty good too. Anyway, folks, if you enjoyed this, or especially if you have any thoughts about, what I can add in these last 6 slots in the main deck, shoot me a comment down below, or throw me a like on the video if you haven't already. That sort of thing helps me out a lot. Have a great rest of the day.